Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hit Your Numbers. For this episode, James has sat down with John Hammond. If you don't know John, he is a seasoned CRO, and they are talking about the state of sales for 2026. As you can imagine, this is a big conversation, so we've had to split the podcast into two parts. We are dropping both parts at the same time, so once you finish listening to part one, you can continue listening to part two. And of course, once you're finished listening to the podcast, do head over to therevenueenabler.com and visit the Learning Hub. We've got loads of great free resources there. You've got the free sales course, loads of free downloads, helpful articles, and of course, over 70 episodes of this podcast full of useful information and advice direct from some of the world's best sales leaders. Right, on with the podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hit Your Numbers podcast. Today I'm joined by John. Hey John, how's it going?
Really well, thanks James, really well.
Good. And I've just seen, I don't know if people will see this when they're watching it back, but you've put the Not So Secret CRO. Tell us a little bit more about that, because you got my attention.
A few years ago I decided I wasn't going to do corporate world anymore in the traditional way. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to do was work with a variety of companies and use my kind of experience and skill rather than my time. And that's what I've been able to do. And what sits at the heart of it is a blog called the Not So Secret CRO. I'm not cool enough to have a Substack.
Okay.
I'm not down enough with the kids, as they say. But what this allows me to do is kind of like articulate the content that I talk about. When I work with clients, I often write about it. When I work with, and when I have an idea, I often write about it. And I kind of like the not so secret kind of concept. So that's what that's about.
I love it. It's fun. It's different. That's what it takes, right? Maybe we'll get into that today. Who knows about how creativity is important in 2026. So we spoke.
Well, it's very different now. Really different now.
It is. And actually, do you know what? I said something the other day. I was like, I remember back in 2017, I was selling this like ABM, like marketing tech, and remember, people in the business would say it's like the buying journey has changed, and we're still saying that today. Isn't it funny how it always changes? And if
Are you telling me that customers are different? Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, AI now, people are shopping on LLMs and not other places. So,
I'm old enough, James, to remember when Google first emerged and people's attention went from magazines and kind of conferences to this internet thing. So, like, to me, it's just another iteration. And, I'm old enough to, I was involved in selling mainframes and all that kind of stuff years ago. So I've seen sort of every version. Everyone got very excited in the early 2000s about virtualization. They've been doing logical partitioning on mainframes for like 3 decades by that point.
Yeah.
So it's like the same things come around. They might be different. They might be breakthrough like AI, the internet itself, Google, all that kind of stuff. But it's just another wave of technology, and we just have to learn to handle it and harness it, really.
I remember being a kid, and me and my sister, about 4 to 6 weeks before Christmas, Mum would take us to Argos, and we would get the most up-to-date Argos catalogue, and we'd go home, and me and my sister would sit or lay on the floor, and we'd be with a board marker circling stuff in our catalogue.
I used to do that too.
And give it to Mum.
It was something else. Littlewoods or something.
Littlewoods. Yeah, that was a good one. Maybe we had a couple of those, and you could put it on tick over there. Because I remember we'd give it to Mum, and we grew up with not much money, and give it to Mum, and she must have thought, Jesus Christ, like these kids want like 7 Xboxes and push bikes and all of that kind of good stuff. And it has changed, right? People aren't just going to the internet now. Like, we're getting a lot of inbound, and the inbound form is, I put into ChatGPT, good sales training companies, et cetera, and you came up on the website. Came up on ChatGPT. People aren't even going to Google anymore, right? So. It's definitely a different world. So it'd be interesting to get into the chat. Just to the listeners, just have a bit of context. Maybe give us like the 30,000 foot view. Who's John? Bit about your background, and then we'll jump into the chat.
Well, I always like to start these things by saying my number one job is I'm a dad. My kids are much older now, so they're 22 and 24. But if I don't say it, they usually take me up on it.
Yeah.
So that's my number one job. It's like 3 phases of career, I'd say. It's like phase 1 was traditional, I'm going to call it traditional. I worked at IBM. I worked in their channel. I was involved in some M&A. Got my kind of appetite for interesting things other than just being a sales guy. Did a variety of jobs, operations, marketing, sales, leadership, all that kind of stuff. And the kind of second phase of my career started when I joined a company called Rackspace. And I got into this cloud thing, whatever the hell that is, right? And we were doing that before AWS was visible. Mm-hmm. So we had a cloud and we had service, and it was a completely, like, the model for that was insanely different. We felt a bit like pioneers. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were just trying stuff to see if it worked. Mm-hmm. So that was amazing, and that got me into kind of fintech and what you do with cloud rather than the utility itself. And then the kind of final phase is the phase that started a few years ago when I said, actually, I want to go about this next phase in a different way. I still feel like I've got a lot to give, but I really don't want to do 65 hours a week in some corporation somewhere. I've done that. It worked very well. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. But it's time for something else. And so I just started helping people, and some of it led to board positions, some of it led to fractional work, some of it led to consulting work. I also ended up doing a bit of training. Like, I tried to convince the company I wasn't a trainer, but they insisted. So I did a bit of that as well. So it allows me to engage different customers in different ways.
Yeah. The cloud part, it was quite funny. I think even now people don't really realize what it is. We say it's the cloud. I remember when I went into the cloud, I went into a data center, and you go into this little kind of booth thing, and they suction all of the hairs and fibers off your body before you go into a data center, and then it's really cold in there on the other side.
I can't believe they let you in.
I broke in. That was our trick back in the day. If you can't get through reception from a cold call, you go in the back door physically and found the CFO's office. And I remember I went into a cloud, and it's very different to what you think the cloud really is. So good old days. All right. So fast forward to 2026. What do you think is the state of sales? Like, what do you think are some of the big kind of mistakes and challenges that reps and teams and leaders are running into?
Well, I think there's a few, like, let's just look at the context of it, like why I think that, right? We have staff turnover of over 35%, right? That means more than a third of sales reps are turning, mm-hmm. right? That cannot be healthy. That's not a good sign. That says people are missing target. We're also seeing only about 30% of people actually hitting target, which means there's about 35% of people that aren't hitting target that still got jobs. Right? So this is not great. The reliance on the target hitters to get the overall target is getting greater and greater and greater, right? So this tells me something isn't right. Okay, that's kind of the first observation. Second observation is I look at the quality of support there is for sellers, and it's pretty poor. I'm an ex-IBM person. I went through IBM sales school. It's a long process, a huge investment. It's such a big investment, they don't do it anymore, right? That gives you some context for it. What exists today for people to have that kind of blue ribboned aspirational thing, a standard that can be set? A lot of people, and I've been guilty of this myself, straight out of university, maybe got a year's worth of work at Tesco or something, but a smart young person. They come into our business, they learn to be a BDR by soaking up stuff around them, a little bit of mentoring, a little bit of coaching, and they're all desperate to be sales reps. And the point I make to each one of those is be careful what you wish for, because you've just taken a seat that's right next to the exit.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to be somewhat unprepared for what's going to happen next. And so that transition is really difficult. So it's really difficult for kind of standards to be raised when there's no real investment in that, right? And training is one of those budgets that goes really early, and most of the training I've seen is pretty poor.
Yeah,
because it's a trainer delivering training, as it were. And one of the unique things about the IBM sales school process was that we had to do 50 calls, like managed calls, different scenarios, with 50 different people inside the organization, right? And what that meant was the whole company gave you their experience, right? It's a whole company of people trying to make you successful. I just don't see anything like that anymore, or even remotely close to that. And so we're sending these young people out there with very limited skills. And what we're seeing is essentially a third of them, just under a third of them, can be successful in that environment. It may take them 4 jobs to be successful.
Yeah.
Because they might have to bump across someone like you that teaches them something, and then someone like me that teaches them another thing. They fall on their knees and graze themselves and dust themselves back up, and off they go to the next job, and they finally get it right. That's a very bruising professional experience, right?
Or they get lucky and maybe they stumble across one of these rare old managers that invest in you.
That's right. And that's going to really only happen in small companies, right? And so I think that's a real challenge for them, right? And here's some of the symptoms I see with some of the companies that I work with. In some companies, what we find is the conversion from a customer or a signature to a customer going live is really, really poor. Mm-hmm. So you can sign a deal, or a deal is signed, it's just in the broadest possible sense, and that customer may never go live. Think of all that cost associated, not just the cost of acquisition, but all the other costs and all those people struggling to get this customer. That's a really good example. Another example is just this endless RFI, RFP process that people find themselves in. And people are, they take the view that actually the better my proposal is, the more likely I am to win, right? And what that means is they're applying to every RFI, which means a crushingly low conversion.
Painful,
right? So these are the kind of things I'm seeing. But really, what we're seeing is inexperience and a lack of clarity in knowing how to solve problems, right? And I'll give you one tiny example. We had that problem working with a company right now, been with them for a really long time. They're kind of my biggest client. And they had a really bad conversion problem. And it was the entire focus for the company was around onboarding. And my point was, the onboarding's not got a problem. The onboarding is receiving something that isn't fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So we fixed it in the sales process. That's literally all we did. We fixed the sales process, and now we have very high levels of conversion. Now, there's plenty of things to do to compress the cycle now, but that's a different kind of problem. And that, I think, what I hear about, like, I'm a member of lots of different WhatsApp groups and lots of different groups, and I love to kind of hear different opinions, and every now and again I kind of chime in. That's how we met, you and I.
Yeah.
And what I see a lot is a lot of chat about technology and stacks, right?
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
Does anyone do that? Can anyone know how this AI tool works, or what's the best data source? All of these things are important.
Or shall I move from SalesLoft to Gong?
Yeah.
Dude, if you think that's going to solve the problem, come on.
I mean, look, I wish I had some of this technology years ago, right? I still don't use that much of it. I do use plenty of technology, but I think the focus needs to be on the skill of the rep. There's a guy I used to work with, and he has a business, and he has this really simple idea. You don't need more leads. You just need to close the ones you get.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a skills issue. That's not a process issue or a technology issue specifically. And I think that's what I'm starting to see. And I think I can help, but I can only help so many people at once, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know if embarrassing is the right word. I think it's quite embarrassing our profession in a lot of cases. Like, the lack of professionalism that goes into it is really poor. Like, our strapline in our business, and nobody gets a degree in B2B sales, right? And I am not actually and my training platform, which is our consumer product, which supports our B2B product, it's called the Sales University, and it's an online training platform. It's got 450 lessons covering every stage of the sales process, from complete stranger outbound conversation through to expanding a customer medic, right? And it's the playbook I built for years as a VP of sales. I just basically put it all into videos, right? And you can, as an SDR, fund it if you're, like a gym membership, right? And it's just like, we all stumble into sales, and nobody, unless you've worked at IBM back in the day, or it took me 8 years until I hit BT, and BT spent a few £1,000s per seller to put us through Huthwaite spin selling. I still got the pack 7 or 8 years ago. I don't have any of the crappy PDFs that I bought off people off the internet or whatever that were full of BS, but I do still have the pack, and I look after it because it was a proper investment in me. Now, it wasn't properly reinforced, but the upfront investment was great. And if you think, like, majority of us stumble into sales And I say this all the time. I'm so glad you brought it up. We're in the same WhatsApp groups. Like, oh, where are you getting your data from now? Or should I move from this to that? And then I jump on a call with a rep who's desperate to be great, wants to get promoted, got big ambitious goals. I can't even see their search bar on Google because they've got 50,000 Chrome extension sales tools. And the sales organization can't book a meeting to save their life. And the ones that can't convert them to revenue. And it's like, we've tried all of this. You mentioned like the churn of talent in the sales org. I kind of look at it as like a hamster wheel. It's like hire, churn, and burn. Blame everybody else. Don't blame the hiring manager and the frontline manager on lack of development in that person and, and supporting them. They're spinning their wheels. And really, the only thing that's left to actually try, and when you do it properly, it seems to work, is actually developing that person.
Well, who knew, right? Who knew that?
Isn't it crazy?
I mean, other than the army, all of healthcare, teaching, other than those people,
every other profession, like my partner's a dentist and like doctors and lawyers,
whatever. Well, other than those people, who knew, right?
Yeah.
And who knew that companies that invest in people in the commercial sphere get the greatest returns and get the best out of their people and create great cultures and stuff like that. And it's one of those things, and we talked about this briefly previously, is this idea that, we're too small for that.
Yeah.
No. You need it more than they need it.
Yeah.
Right? There's like 15 of you or 30 of you. Like, you guys need to be a unit. You need to have a really clean process. And so the guys at Joint Flows, I love those guys, right? Mm-hmm. Whenever I talk to those guys, they've got such a good buzz going. They're a really small outfit, but they really pack a punch.
Yeah.
Right? And they really work on it. It's not an accident.
Great. Yeah.
Right? It's not an accident. They're intentional in their actions. And I think that kind of thing is really missing. So yes, to a degree, it's the hiring manager, right? Because they're probably inexperienced at being a sales leader, right?
Yeah.
Let's just be honest about it. The transition from sales to sales leader
is not much better. If anything, it's probably worse.
Yeah, and it's bigger than being at university or working somewhere else outside of sales and going into sales. That's a big jump. The jump from individual contributor to manager is a really big jump, and the jump above that is even bigger. Yeah. Right? Because you're so far removed from the deals. Like, it's a completely different job. And so people aren't really prepared for that. In fact, at Rackspace, I used to help with a course for new managers. And my first thing I'd say is, you are now completely ill-equipped for the job that you're about to do. Right?
So true.
So please listen and learn some new skills, right? So that's part of it. But actually, the organization they're set in often isn't thinking about that. And there is still this kind of really weird thing about sales. Like, yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, I understand that there have been some really appalling bits of behavior over the years that we've all seen. And, mis-selling's a big word, right? It's a very, very big word. I'm very clear about people. If you say that, it means fraud, right?
Yeah.
But we have these huge instances in our society, whether it's credit cards or car finance or whatever it is, right? We've all seen a version of it. We've all come across it. So there is this thing, but actually where I've been really most successful, where I've seen the most success in companies, is when everyone sort of says, well, we're all in this. Mm-hmm. And so we need to respect the sales guys, and the sales guys need to respect the tech guys. And because how do we make that connection between everyone? Because as I like to point out to people, there's only one group of people that have 50% of their salary up for grabs here. Right? Yeah. The rest of you are getting paid regardless of how you perform.
Yeah.
Right. And you can whine and moan about how much you get paid, different issue. But this lot are operating under a different kind of stress. And yes, they get rewarded for it, right?
Yeah.
But if they don't do it, no one eats.
Yeah.
Right. And so your buy-in to make them successful is huge.
Yeah.
And my concern is that a lot of companies lots of founders are really brilliant, right? And they've been really successful getting their companies off the ground. They're often technical people, right? And so they don't really appreciate that, or they think they can do it, and they can to a degree, but it's never really, we've all had that pre-qualified closed deal from the CEO. Like, yeah, I met this guy, we shook hands on it. Like, cool.
Yeah, sweet.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
The CQ, let's call it. CEO lead.
The mis-selling part, I want to go back to it. Look, there are some naughty people out there who do some naughty things, right? We've seen
that. But
you think about it though. there's two things at play that I don't know if you're seeing. One, I've been on the receiving end of this. CEO comes in, good news, James. You can hire those people you want. I've closed the round. I'm like, oh, sweet, we got the money. They were like, yeah, this is the expectation. I'm like, dude, where can I get some of whatever you're smoking? Because that's how do we get to that number, right? So the part of it is, I think we kind of create our own. And I get it, you need to close a round, but I think we do create some of the pressure for our sellers, because then we give them an inflated number. I was on the phone with a rep the other day, and they were like, my number's like ridiculous, and they just closed around. It's like they've committed to something, now they need to go and do it. They put everyone's quotas up. Again, they don't invest in their skills, they just give them a couple more tools, and guess what happens? One, people just start shoving stuff through because they got to get a job, otherwise a deal, they're going to lose their job. Or two, John, the bit that really kind of defends the rep is, do you know how many orgs I go to kick off a program, and I'm like, we need to have real good clarity on the ICP and the personas so that we can build the training to align to what they sell and who they sell it to. And they go, yeah, I'll come back to you on that, because they don't even have a 1 or 2 pager on definition of what ICP is. So how can a seller get stung for mis-selling when they've not even got clarity on who they should be selling to?
I think it's stage related. I think that there's an acceptable level of it in stage 1. Yeah. When you're hustling for customers, I don't know who the customer is. I don't even know how the hell they're going to use it, right?
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's just go and see if people buy it and see who uses it, and then we'll kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
But once you're in that process, to not use that information to narrow the focus is kind of a criminal offense, right? And here's what I like to put everything back to a business kind of initiative or a clarification, which is, you want to spend your money evenly across everyone. Mm-hmm. You think that's your strategy, rather than focusing on your money on where it makes a difference, right? Because the cost of acquisition is the same. Let's just, broadly speaking, it's the same whether it's a good customer or a bad customer. Client lifetime value, fundamentally different, which means that, you put those two things together, that's basically it, isn't it? You can argue about everything else, but that's basically it. Client lifetime value, cost of acquisition, right? One goes up, one goes down. But if people aren't doing that, it can be really difficult. And I'm just about to write a series on, not ICP, I call it the kind of Trinity, but we'll talk about that later. But one piece of it is the ICP. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen a lot of is someone or a group of people sitting in a room coming back and saying, right, we're going to sell to left-handed automotive companies in Spain. That's the ICP. Wow. Do you know what I mean? That's really specific.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've gone from this thing, which is kind of amorphous, to this really narrow thing. And guess what? It falls into a hole, and then they go back to the thing, right?
Yeah.
Because that's too specific. My sense, certainly it's different if you work for a really established large organization. They're very, very clear who the customer is. But even they are constantly trying to find new markets, right? Mm-hmm. That's why they have business development directors. It's really it's an iterative process. This is as close as we can get today, mm-hmm. right? This is as close as we can get tomorrow, and it gets a little bit tighter, a little bit tighter, a little bit tighter. And I had this wonderful meeting with the sales director somewhere, and he was constantly trying to pull the floor down on the size of the customer because he wanted more things to count so he could go sell to them.
Yeah. And
the point I made to him is yeah, I get your point, but the word ideal is the key word.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it a painful conversation?
Lowest common denominator. But it's really interesting. How do you convince a group of people that are selling, making some sort of money, right, that they should stop doing that and start doing this? Mm-hmm. Right. That's a really big thing to get people to do. It's you want me to put and my money's already at risk. I found a way of making money, and now you want me to do this other thing. Dude, I'm kind of gonna need some convincing.
I don't know if this was the right way to do it, but I did it and it had some effect. I said to the guys as we were building the first one, I said, do you know how your target goes up every year? They're like, yeah. I'm like, it kind of sucks, doesn't it? They're like, yeah, it kind of sucks. I'm like, it's only going up 20, 30%. They're like, yeah, it kind of sucks. I'm like, look, if we keep closing the wrong customers and we're churning these out of the back end, your number's going to go up by 60, 70% next year, because I got to replace that and you got to give me some growth. So if you want it to be double, triple hard next year, just stick to the ICP. And if it means you book less meetings, but they're the right ones, I'm kind of cool with that. Yeah. But if you want to go freestyle,
I think that's the right approach, James. Is the danger for most people is they don't really know why they have to do this target, because probably they told the VCs when they raised the round. And actually, you've got to be strong enough to say, look, we're going to get there, but it won't be in 6 months, or 12 months or whatever it is. Yeah. But this idea of explaining the real reason that sits behind it, right? I think that's a really valuable bit. And I think that's quite often missed out because the people in the middle layers, or maybe even the person at the top, hasn't got that language.
Yeah.
Right? We don't talk about that enough. We don't, one of the things that I was privileged enough to experience through this training was understanding business, right? I then went and educated myself and, did sort of other things to enhance that. But if you understand actually what is going on, then you can kind of explain it. I was doing this with a pricing model recently, and obviously customers want it cheaper. I mean, it's not news to anyone, right? But the sales reps are finding it really difficult to defend it, right? And they're just saying, oh, it's only a few grand here. It's only a few grand here. It's subscription business. So the price I built highlighted three things to them. One, when you make that tiny change, this is the value on the deal that you're changing, right? So it may only seem like a couple of grand to the subscription, but it means this much over a 2-year period, right? Because there's other concessions as well. That was the first thing. The second thing is there was a fintech firm, so it's a lot about yield, like how much money they push across and how much we're going to make. So it can't go below that yield. Otherwise, it's really inefficient. And then it's the gross margin. Like if we sell at a lower margin than that, that's diluting our overall margin as a company, which means the covenants that we have with the VC are broken, which means it's not our company anymore.
Yeah, which means you're at the job center.
Yeah, we're all at the job center. Yeah, and a lot of people put their money in, and now it's worthless.
Yeah,
right. So trying to and the difference that has made is enormous because they're now coming back and say, and they know I'm going to just say no below a certain point, so they just don't even ask.
Yeah,
right. And it just teaches them, like, there's a reason we do it this way. There's a reason we work in this way. I recently had a conversation with someone about differentiation. A really, really interesting conversation. And they were saying, oh, we're differentiated. I'm saying, but you're selling at the same price as everyone else. And they, yeah, but we're differentiated. I'm like, well, I get the concept, but actually this is a mistake because if everyone else is producing something cheaper than you, and you're selling at the same price, you're making less margin.
Yeah.
What is that? Oh, so you think we should charge the same margin? I'm like, no, you're still missing it. You've invested more money. You have to make way more margin, which means that defines what your customers look like, which defines where you go fishing for them. It defines your approach, your pricing. And it's these tiny decisions that we can make without really realizing the kind of commercial devastation that they leave behind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that's really missing, which means that as a result, that sort of trickle-down effect, it sort of gets to the front line, which is the sellers, right?
Yeah.
And what we've got with salespeople is some of the most resilient people on the planet, right? They are like, it's a tough gig, right? They are some of the most intelligent, some of the most creative people I've ever come across, right? Trying to understand humans, solve problems, aggregate people together to help you solve the problem, bring your people along with you, convince 10 people, 5 of which you won't ever meet, how to do, like, this is, you've got to be smart and creative and resilient and driven, right? But we're making it almost impossible for them. We're not giving them the tools, we're not giving them the right environment. And even when we do bring in the tools in your scenario, the foundation isn't in place, right? So what tends to happen is that as people go through their careers, they learn a lot of this stuff and then they just start doing it.
Yeah.
Right? There's no one goes into sales knowing this stuff, right? If you're lucky enough to land somewhere that tells you it, great, lucky you, right? The rest of the population have to go figure it out. And there's a lot of people in sales.
Loads.
There's a lot of people in sales.
And a load of people leave it, unfortunately, every year because they can't figure it out. Because, again, the business tries everything around tooling, etc. The differentiation one is really funny. Like, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they were talking about basically like AI and companies adding AI, like Figma adding like this AI thing to their business, but they're not charging for it. Nobody's actually really paying for it. And then you've got Notion, which have put their AI, which I use in our business, like the AI component is like at a higher price point. It's almost like double, I think. I end up upgrading us to. And like differentiation only really matters if the customer actually cares about it and are they prepared to pay for it. Like I could say one of my differentiators is, I wear these purple hoodies and none of my competitors do. My customer ain't gonna pay me because I wear this like purple hoodie, right? It has to be of value. And most people don't even know how they differentiate. And a lot of the ones that do, customers aren't prepared to pay for it. It has to be of value. But people don't think about this. They're just like, oh yeah, that's different. So we'll just go and put our pricing up as a result, or they can leave it the same.
Really, we treat business like it's about feel, right? We sort of talk about business leaders as they've got a really good instinct. Maybe, right? Maybe it's just years of experience that feels like instinct to you. Or maybe it's years of experience and years of education. Because I tell you what, there's as much research around business as there is anything else if you choose to reach out and grab it. So we're talking about differentiation, right? There are essentially two other business models, right? Which is Focus, left-handed German medical instrument companies, right? It's very, very focused, right? Or overall cost leadership. So someone like Dell, we're going to make it cheaper than everyone else and we can sell it cheaper than everyone else. But it's the cost of production that's cheap. So who identified? No one discovered this. They just sort of found that it existed, much like gravity. There's a guy called Simon Porter, right? And he works at Harvard, and he has written. Oh, Michael Porter. Sorry, got to confuse Simon Sinek. Michael Porter. He has written thousands of pages of really high quality research and analysis on competitive strategy, value chains, all this kind of stuff, and it's just there. You can just get it.
Yeah,
right. You could go buy competitive strategy for $4.99 from Amazon. It's just there. Like who's read it? Who even knows who the hell Michael Porter is?
Yeah.
Right? 30 years ago, everyone knew who Michael Porter was. Right.
Yeah.
Today we don't talk about it. We talk about Simon Sinek, and he's amazing. But there's real depth to some of this stuff. Like some of the analysis in those books that I'm sort of referring to is really detailed. Right. You could really understand business. Like it's just there. To consume, but people don't do it because they don't want to. I was working with a guy, sort of mentoring, coaching type environment, and he asked me, he goes, give me a reading list, and I gave him a bunch of HBR stuff. Right? I gave him the Challenger sale. But if you understand that, you understand the connection with customers. I gave him the HBR book of around the top 10 HBR articles, most read articles. Really brilliant. Just gives you a real foundation in a variety of different things. And I told him to read Machiavelli's The Prince, because I still think that's the greatest management handbook ever. I mean, you can't kill anyone anymore. That's totally off the cards. But as an understanding of human beings and what motivates them, like the difference between that period of time and now is sort of iPhones. Other than that, people are people, right? And so just trying to educate yourself on it and getting the guidance, I think that's really powerful too.
And I think part of that is it's just so fluffy now, and I don't know if that's part of the issue. But we laugh, but you can, like you said, just go to HBR and just get a PDF for $4.99, and it won't be 100% what you need, but if it gives you 50%, that might move the needle a little bit, right? Like, this is like not self-promotion, but you can like right now go to my website for like £99 a month, it's cheaper than my David Lloyd, right? I don't even go there, and you can get 400 lessons word for word, what to say, why to say it, how to say it, templates, etc. for any stage of the process, right? This never existed when I got into sales 15 years ago. I just got given, I was selling PBXs and stuff, like telephone systems and stuff back in the day, to small, tiny industrial estates in Dorset, terrible, tiny patch, with no training, not even a CRM. I had to drive around in a company car and go, that building looks really big. Can't see inside, but I bet they got loads of people, so probably loads of phones. So I'd write down, John's tiles, and I'd go back and the lady at the front desk, she'd have to type them into Sage, and she was the only one that had an account, and then she'd print the call lists for me, and I'd just rip the phones. Like, there was none of this stuff. Like, you can now just go online and buy books or buy courses and things like that, and there's loads of evidence for some. I got 100 people like with videos saying this stuff is the real thing. People just don't want it, John, I think, as much as we did back in the day. They're just like, this is a lifestyle thing, and if they get cut, then they'll just go to LinkedIn Jobs and find the next one and lie on the CV and get through the recruitment process.
I think that's definitely true for some of it. How much of that do you think is the ridiculous demand we have for salespeople and the reality of the marketplace for salespeople?
Yeah,
right?
It's a good point.
It may well be that there were less salespeople when we were doing it. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't want to be that guy, because definitely less salespeople when I was doing it.
Yeah,
but it's also then there's an inevitable gap of people in the market or in those jobs that don't really want to do them, but it was the only job they could get, so they're giving it a go, right? Yeah. And I think that's true for maybe the last 5 years as graduates come out of university. There's definitely that kind of promise that I had when I went to university, which is get a good degree from a decent university and you'll get a good job. That was absolutely true, right? My kids have both got degrees of a very high level. One of them has a master's, no jobs.
Yeah,
right? That's nothing to do with them. That's more to do with the market. And so what tends to happen is people find a job and it's a selling job and off they go, right? Yeah. And I think there's an element of that. But also I think there is this feeling that somehow I can technology my way to the answer.
Yeah.
Right? That I can, I've got LinkedIn, I can write, was it 25, 50 in-mails a month, and I can do this, and I can do that, and I can get AI to write my emails, and then I can go to Clay to find the right customers and all this kind of stuff. And man, you could do all of that, and you could still not sell a bean.
Mm-hmm. People are doing all of that and still not selling any beans.
And I think that the missing component is the stuff that we're talking about. I don't think it's drive. Because I've not met many people in the last 4 years, and I've spoken to a lot of companies in the last 4 years, not met many people in this type of role who don't want to do it, who don't want to get better, right? I think it's on us, either as leadership or as external, to initiate that excitement in them. Yeah. Give them a sense that if you do this, these are the tiny margins we're talking about. There's no one magic technique, piff, paff, puff, some magical word that you can say that gets you the sale.
100%.
There is technique. Like the number one answer I give to people when they give me a situation at which they're at the end of the line, right? Like, what would you do in this situation? My number one answer is I wouldn't let it get here.
Yeah,
I would have solved this over here, right? There's so many things that have either gone wrong or not happened to get you to this position, and you think, my experience is really about getting you back in the deal. You've already lost the deal.
Yeah.
Right. This is a learning experience, not a turnaround.
Yeah.
Right. This is and it's trying to get people to kind of really understand this. If you get these tiny margins right and you aggregate them together, you'll be better. It's a skill that you learn, like every other skill. It's not, I've seen great salespeople become bad salespeople, and it's a really simple thing. They think it's them.
Yeah.
They think, oh, it's me, I'm magic. Not in those words. They probably have some other way of...
Some do.
Yeah, I'm really good at this. I've got the gift, right?
Yeah.
No, you don't. You just were really working at it.
Yeah.
Right? I went on I go this thing. We've taken our kids camping for 15 years, 9 dads. We all joined IBM at the same time. That's what we've got in common. And we were all broadly in sales one way or another. And we're all old farts now, and our kids are way older than us, and way older than they should be to go camping with their parents, right?
Yeah.
And drink us under the table. It's a brilliant experience. But some of them are now getting into sales, and they're sort of saying, what would you do? And I'm like, I don't know, I can barely remember what it feels like. And what I'm trying to get across to them is one of the dads I think is one of the best, is probably the best sales guy I've ever met, ever seen, right? I've known this guy since I was 16 years old. It's without a doubt the best sales guy I've ever seen. And I pointed to him and I went, that's the guy. And he's like, well, what's special about him? I said, well, he works really hard. He improves constantly. He's really trustworthy, right? And he tries to solve your problem. And that he is dedicated to those 4 things. right? That, like, you're worrying about getting enough stuff in your pipeline. That's just hours. That's hours spent and tiny improvements of technique. And congratulations, you're 22. You've got 3 to 5 years of this shit. Right? Let's just accept it. You've got 3 to 5 years of it, but if you come out the other side, you'll be better for it. But that's who you're aiming to be.
Yeah.
Right? He kind of looks like an accountant, which is kind of what he trained to be. Right? He's not got a flashy car. He's not got a big swanky, suit or anything like that. He's just a really solid guy, and he gets it done. People love it. They love it.
Yeah. I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn. I not like the best time at school and things like that. Didn't do very well. Fell out of school. No qualifications. Worked in a building site. Did flips and burgers in McDonald's and that kind of stuff. And then got into a building site. It was lovely in the summer. Great, good tan, out with the lads, whatever. Pub at lunch and stuff. And then when it's pissing it down, which is most of the time in this country, it was pretty miserable. So I wanted to get off the street and inside, and I saw an ad in the job in the newspaper for sales, and did that and never looked back. And I always say that strong work ethic and a student of the game is what got me here. Like there will be definitely people out there that do outwork me, but I would say, like, you got to get up fucking early and stay up real late if you're going to outwork me. Like, I'm in here like 60, 70 hours a week, only because I don't want to wait until I'm 50 or 60 to retire. I want to retire at 40. I'm 34 years old. I want to play golf 5 days a week, and I want to drive to the golf course in a Ferrari. And I just know if I do more now, maybe that will happen in that timeline. All right, thanks for listening to this episode. I've got something else I want to give you before we wrap up here. So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions.